Hi, in this lesson, we're going to look at how we can use variables to size and position graphics in our Python graphics programs. But first, why is this important? Using variables in place of static values in our graphics programs give the same benefits as using variables in our console programs. First, variables allow our code to be cleaner and easier to debug because the variable names describe their use. In our graphics programs, variables allow the output from one program to be positioned and sized the same way regardless of a changing canvas size, and allows us to resize and reposition items efficiently and effectively. Now let's see how to do this. In the last lesson, we created the flag of Switzerland using the top right coordinates of the rectangles that were determined based on the constant values we were given. When we run this program, we see that the flag looks as we intended, but if the size of our canvas changes, our rectangles are no longer centered on our flag. If we use variables instead of static values to size and position our shapes, we can have a program that looks as intended no matter how the canvas dimensions change. Let's see how to do this. Some commands that will be helpful when altering our graphics to any size canvas are the getWidth and getHeight commands. We can call these commands and save the values to variables that we can use to size and position the rest of the objects in our program. For example, if we save the height of the canvas as the result of the getHeight command and the width as the result of the getWidth command, and then create a rectangle the same size as these values, our rectangle will always be equal to the full size of the canvas. So even if we set the size of the canvas to a different value, the rectangle shape will cover the canvas automatically without having to edit any other commands. Let's take a look at how we can use these commands in our Flag of Switzerland program. If the dimensions of our canvas can now change, we will need to use variables in place of static numbers. Our assumption is that the canvas is always a square. The first thing we can do is save the value of either getWidth or getHeight inside a variable labeled side because our canvas is a square, so both dimensions should be equal. Now we know that we want our red rectangle to fill the entire canvas, so we'll set that variable equal to the value of the side variable. To find the sizing of the white rectangles, let's break the flag into pieces. We can see that the short leg of the white rectangle is 1/5 the full side of the flag, so we can set this value to side divided by 5. The long leg of the rectangle takes up 3/5 the full side of the flag, so we can set this value equal to 3 times side divided by 5. Now that we've determined the size of each shape, we'll need to determine the location of each rectangle. Let's start by finding the x-coordinate of the location of the vertical rectangle. We know that the entire width of the canvas is saved in the variable side, which means that half of this value would be side divided by 2. The width of the vertical rectangle is saved in the variable white rectangle short leg, so half of it would just be white rectangle short leg divided by 2. We can subtract these values to find the x location of our vertical rectangle. Now let's find the y value. We already know that half of the height of our canvas is side divided by 2. The height of our vertical rectangle is equal to white rectangle long leg, so half of this will be white rectangle long leg divided by 2. When we subtract these values, we find the y-coordinate of the location of our vertical rectangle. We can find the location of the horizontal rectangle the same way, where the x and y values are just switched because our rectangle is laid horizontally instead of vertically. Let's put all this together in the editor. To get started with this program, let's make our red rectangle. So we're going to create our variable red rectangle and use the rectangle keyword. And to control the width and the height, we're going to use the side variable. We're going to set the color to color.red, and we will add our red rectangle. Now let's just see how this works. When we run our program, we see that the red rectangle covers the entire size of the canvas. What if instead we had a larger canvas that was 350 by 350? Now if we run this, we see no matter how the canvas increases in size, the rectangle will still cover the entire canvas. So we know that using our variables is working. Okay, let's create the tall white rectangle first. So we'll call this white vertical rectangle, and we'll use rectangle keyword. And our width of this rectangle is going to be the short side. So I'm going to use white rectangle short leg as my width and white rectangle long leg as my height. Now my white vertical rectangle, we want to set the color to color.white, and then we want to set the position, and this is where all of our planning really comes into play. So the position of this rectangle is side divided by 2 minus the white rectangle short leg divided by 2. And our y is going to be side divided by 2 minus white rectangle long leg divided by 2. And let's add our white vertical rectangle. Now let's see how that works. Perfect. And if I resize back down to 250 by 250, my rectangle still stays the same size and position. So now let's create the long white rectangle, and we're going to call this one white horizontal rectangle. And we'll use our rectangle keyword. And instead of the short leg being the width, we want the short leg to be the height here. So we're going to get white rectangle long leg as our width and white rectangle short leg as our height. We want to set the color to color.white, and we want to set the position using now our horizontal rectangle position. So that's going to be side divided by 2 minus white rectangle long leg divided by 2 for the x. And for the y, we're going to use side divided by 2 minus white rectangle short leg divided by 2. And let's add that horizontal rectangle. Perfect. And if we size back up, great work. In this lesson, we learned how to use the getHeight and getWidth commands to help us write programs using variables. Now it's your turn.